to always see you in a top.
Gee, you can still see me there every day. 9 o'clock.
I just don't go anymore.
No, it's my wife and I, we just made it a regular stop now.
I know, we used to go there all the time, my husband and I, and I was like, oh, there's some Thursday.
All right.
Yeah, well, we always get the
Good evening, everyone. It is now the time and place for the December regular meeting of the Royal Oak Planning Commission. I'm going to call the meeting to order and start by doing what we usually do. We introduce ourselves, starting at the far end there.
Ann Beakey, good evening.
Do I got to push a button or anything?
Yep. Nope. Just tap it. There you go.
Well, now that I'm a new guy up here trying to learn what it is. I'm Jim Ellison, back to the Planning Commission after a 6-year absence, and I'm excited to be here.
Welcome back.
Charlene Douglas, City Commissioner.
Tim Twain, Director of Community Development.
Aaron Liao, City Attorney.
Woody Gantino. Eric Klooster.
Mike Fournier, Mayor.
And I'm the chairperson, Gary Casada, and we'll get started. Before we start, does anybody have anything to add to the agenda tonight? Okay, I have one small thing I'm going to ask at the end about indexing the former decisions that we have. I noticed that both of the items today reference an earlier decision, and so you guys must have some sort of an index. So I'd like to talk about that at the end. Anything else? Okay. Next order of business, approval of the meeting minutes for the November 15th meeting. If the commissioners had a chance to look at these, if they have any questions, comments, or discussion, or a motion.
Move approval.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Gantina. To approve the meeting minutes from November 15th. All in favor, we're going to take a voice vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Minutes are approved. All right, next item. Public comment on non-agenda planning items. If there are members of the public who would like to come forward and speak on non-agenda items, please do so at this time. I see some heads shaking out there, so I assume those are petitioners. All right, we'll close the public comment section and we'll head to the new business. Do I understand there's a withdrawal?
Yes, Planning Division on the first item, D1, the petitioner asked for it to be withdrawn from tonight's meeting. They may reapply in the future and come back, but they want to come up with some different concepts for what their request would be. So they've withdrawn their request.
Oh, it's really interested in hearing that one.
And I just want to clarify for the record, a withdrawal, they didn't ask for a postponement, they withdrew it, so they have to reapply and put another fee in and start from the beginning?
Yes.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments on the first item? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the second item. This is a revised special land use permit and site plan, SP 21-07-10, 25519 Woodward Avenue. Mr. Twing, if you can introduce this to us.
Certainly. You did see this request back in July of 2021. The Planning Commission did approve the special land use permit and site plan associated with the establishment of a daycare center at this address. One of the contingencies contained in the site plan review approval was that the driveway opening to the Woodward service lane be reduced to 25 feet and that the drive lane and the curb cut be at that width. The existing width at the opening is 52 feet, and that was what was shown at the site plan at the time. That 52 feet exceeds the maximum width allowed under the zoning ordinance, which would be 30 feet. And the petitioner's again asking to leave it at 52 feet in width. In order for that to occur, you would have to go back and modify your special land use approval and grant permission for the petitioner to seek a variance from the ZBA. And then secondly, you would have to modify your site plan approval to make it subject to the ZBA granting that waiver. So it is, I believe that's a summary of their request. They are here to provide any other details they would like.
I have a question. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Twing? Okay, I have one. So this was a contingency that we had in the previous approval that we gave, and everything else, as far as we know, has been complied with, but they have come back to us and asked for this? Is this something that the department cited, or are they initiating this interaction?
This is their request. This is not the department's request. You'll see in the staff report we don't support the request, but obviously it's your condition. There are two mechanisms that are there, as I said. One is the 52 feet exceeds the zoning ordinance provision, so you'd have to grant them permission to seek a variance of beyond 30 feet. Your condition under prior approval was to narrow it to 25 feet. So it's their request. It's not the planning department's.
Okay, great. Is the petitioner here?
Richard's actually stepping forward, who is the tenant in the building. My name is Jeffrey Poe. We and my companies and my father own the first three buildings north of the zoo, including the building and the parking lots that are in question here. I am here to, as part of this presentation, to address what is perceived to be a potential safety issue here as presented by the staff. It was my understanding that this narrowing of the approaches was a safety issue to slow down traffic and prevent cars from slamming into cars in the parking lot or something like that. I'm not exactly sure of all of the underpinnings of that or of the data associated with it. What I'm here to talk about is the real life situation that's there. My office, my law offices sit directly south of the parking lot in question. I'm on the second floor. I have sat there for 40 years. We have the parking lots on both sides of my building at 25487 Woodward. The parking lot that services my building at 25487, I'm sure that all of you have driven down Woodward and you've seen the Poe Realty sign there. You know, my dad's been there since 1957 or something like that. Getting in and out of my parking lot, which has a narrow entry, which is probably pretty close to what this ordinance is requiring, somewhere in the area of 30 feet, is the constant source of complaints from my tenants, from my visitors, from my clients getting in and out of my parking lot. It is tough to make that turn where you only have a 30-foot approach. Go to the parking lot in question here, which is immediately north of my building, which has the 52 feet entry apron off of Woodward, which was put in pursuant to whatever was the regulation back when they widened Woodward for the 696 expansion and took out all of our Woodward Avenue parking in front of the buildings. That approach has never had an issue. We've never had an incident with a car being hit. It is much safer from all perspectives of everybody who uses that lot. I've taken a poll of all of our tenants, of our users, and they would much prefer to pull into that driveway, drive around the back of my building, and park in my lot instead of going in and out. Winter is a huge issue on this in terms of the approach. The wider approach allows for more time for people to navigate the turn into a parking lot there. Whereas when they come into my building, where I have two approaches into my parking lot and a wall in between, I can't tell you how many times we've had to repair the wall at tremendous expense because people cannot navigate the turnoff of Woodward. In fact, we had to go to the extent of putting in huge steel I-beams to protect the wall. We've had accidents out in front of that lot because of the narrow approach and the problem navigating into our lot. The lot in question, we've never had an issue. In the 40 years that I have sat and observed all of this, we've never had an incident with a parked car being hit, with people complaining about the approach getting in and out. And, you know, I understand the ordinance and maybe the intent behind it, but this is real life and this is a different situation. You've got to remember, we've got people coming down that westerly lane of Woodward to get under the zoo parking lot to get onto 696. And they are usually traveling a little bit faster than they should. And people pulling into our lots want to have the leeway to sort of get off of Woodward and approach our parking lot and get in there. At my lot, they can't do that. We've had some collisions out there. At the lot that Stephanie is using, we've never had an incident. I also like to remind the commission, if they look at all of the entrances on Woodward on that block, the only lot that has arguably the narrower approach is my lot to my law office building. Every other lot on that block has a wide approach, including the two municipal lots. The municipal lot directly north of the building that Stephanie is using, I think the approach there is close to 60 feet. I think Mr. Twing can give us the exact number on that. And that's got two approaches to it at 60 feet, or roughly that number. And we're just sort of dumbfounded why we would want to do something that most everybody who uses our lot says to narrow it is more dangerous than leaving it the way it is. I can only say to you folks, is this a solution looking for a problem? We haven't had an incident here. The cost is staggering to reduce this. We do have some contingencies in mind if we've got to narrow some approach to it, and we can discuss those. But at this point, from a safety standpoint, in the real world, we just don't see it. And we'd like you to allow us the variance from it to maintain the status quo as it's been since this was put in when Woodward was expanded for the 696 interchange. I'll be happy to answer any questions once Stephanie has given her 2 cents worth on this, and hopefully we can come to some good conclusion on this that works for everybody.
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Bowles. I'm the executive director of School of Creativa, which is this preschool that exists right now in the building at 25423 Woodward, which is on the zoo side of the Poe building, and we're expanding into the building in question tonight here at 25519. So as you referred to the request the last time we were here, we've been working on this for about a year, and we've been working hard through this whole time. So the purpose, as you've heard from Jeff, is to hopefully be able to maintain our non-conforming driveway at 52 feet. So we understand, especially as a child care provider, that there's a lot of rules and regulations, and the purpose of them is to keep everybody safe. And, we understand that. And as Jeff described, pretty much in depth as I was going to describe, some of the pitfalls about that particular stretch of Woodward, because it is like a 10-lane road there, and the way people drive down it, I call it the apron, is kind of the spot between the street and the sidewalk, and then there's the sidewalk, and then there's the parking lot in question. So it's quite a ways back by the time you get to the parking lot, and having that apron be wide there really, there's been so many times where I'm in my car and I'm slowing down and I'm getting ready to turn in, and you see the cars behind you and you really hope that they're going to stop. You're never really sure. So, even being able to get onto that apron somewhat and then navigate the lot sometimes has been really helpful. Like your heart is in your throat. And a lot of our families have children in the back of their car and you really don't want to be rear-ended. So, that's one of our main concerns. And then as referenced, because of financial hardship is a reason too that this is a problem with narrowing it. So we all know about the pandemic, right? We've all experienced it. And just the supply chain issues, the issues with labor, materials, just all sorts of things have slowed us down and just about doubled the cost of renovating our space so far. And, this just makes it that much more difficult. So I just want to make sure that I have all my points here. It's a little nerve-wracking being up here. Yeah, that's the bulk of it. It feels unsafe. It feels like that much more of a significant hardship financially, and also in terms of time and the time it will take to do this project, because it has these unique characteristics because it is right on Woodward. You are probably also much more familiar with this than I was, because I'm not that familiar with the special constraints of Woodward and it being a state highway and how deep it is, and the regulations for doing anything that touches it is frankly kind of terrifying for an ordinary person that's just trying to open a small business. Yeah, and we would just like to be able to open and serve, the children of our community, because there is such a crisis right now with childcare and so many kids, even just in Oakland County, there's like 5,000 children waiting to get into preschools. So we really want to try to contribute to that and open our doors and do what we, intended to do when we started this project. So thank you.
If you have time, I'm a parent. I was invited to
Please
speak. So
introduce yourself, and you got you have more than 3 minutes because you're a petitioner.
Okay.
I guess.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I guess since you don't have any, your other petitioner withdrew. So my name is Lena Stevens. I am a parent of 2 children at Scuola Creativa, and I also sit on their volunteer finance committee. So I was just asked to come tonight to sort of talk a little bit about how I feel about Scuola and what this drop-off process does feel like. So I live and work in Ferndale, so I'm coming north, turning around, doing the drop-off, and then heading back in Ferndale. So I basically do this like kind of circle thing on Woodward Avenue 2 times a day and have been doing that for a year and a half. First things first, Scuola Creativa is a absolute gem. I don't know what my life would be like without it. It follows a methodology called Reggio Emilia. It is a phenomenal. I know the daycare is the code word for it. It's not a daycare. It's a school. It is amazing. I'm a better parent. My kids are amazing. I just love it. I could cry if I talk about it longer, so I won't talk about it longer. And I also read, the staff report, and, I think it did a really great job of sort of talking about why the 30-foot rule is in place and why it was, constricted further to the 25-foot. And I think while interactions within the parking lot are obviously very critical of not wanting to have accidents or interactions with pedestrians, but the interaction on Woodward is absolutely a component of this. At least once or twice a week, there's times where I'm looking in the rearview mirror, like, does that person really see me? And I'm not always certain that they do. Being that the road is so big and people are traveling so fast, they're not really in that mindset to stop. We're the last stop kind of before the zoo, and even the zoo is like a road, a lane that you turn into, so you don't have to come to anything kind of like a complete stop. So it is a little nerve-wracking. Not that we need to slow down and come into this small parking lot. That is absolutely, obviously true. But that interaction off Woodward does play a part, and having room to maneuver does tend to help a little bit. And then on the financial hardship piece, just for this particular organization, Before the pandemic, we were able to be revenue positive, and we have not gotten back there. With the increase of, cost of labor, cost of supplies, and that we do want to pay our staff a living wage. And that is incredibly hard to do with no federal and no state support for childcare in this country. And so, just striving every day to make this model work and provide not just regular standard daycare, to provide quality education service for these young kids is just really, really difficult. It's really difficult to do. So I just wanted to speak on their behalf and thank you for their consideration. And I'm here if you have any other questions about, what the experience is like from a parent perspective.
Thank you. All right. Are there questions for the petitioner? You don't have to.
There we go. Okay, got it. The old man knew electronics. It's tough to figure out. I got a question for the operations person. Okay. Do you have particularly busy times in the morning or in the afternoon when your students are picked up or dropped off?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is there a busier time, like between 8 and 9 and whatever, where they're dropped off? So that
Yeah.
would be fair to assume that that's your biggest draw in your traffic, is at those times, and that's when
Right.
the most traffic interference. We've got people coming in and going out. Would it probably occur?
Yes, and in between 8 and 9 and in between 2:45 and 3:15 are really, other than that, it's like 1 or 2 people trickling in and out, maybe going on a break or something.
Yeah. Have you noticed any congestion at that driveway with people either going in too deep into the driveway or too shallow, and then creates confusion?
So, I'm trying to envision it. So, I can speak more to our current parking lot, but I can imagine that
Operation is going to be the same.
it's going to be the same. So people are coming in and people are pulling out at the same time. And then in the lot itself, there's people doing the same thing, pulling into a spot. Sometimes people have to wait in the lot for the other cars to navigate around. And so people are blessedly seem cautious and courteous when they're coming in and out. But they have to slow down. And
yeah,
then,
they've lived the situation. They know what to expect, and they're used to it.
yes, our people do.
Yeah,
Who doesn't know what to expect are the people going up and down Woodward. But
Yeah.
the other piece is there's a time of day that's a little bit later, but it's like rush hour, I guess, when people are literally lined up to get on 696.
Yeah.
And so they're way out. You have to wait in the lot to get in and out because traffic is also
Yeah.
lined up. So
Okay.
that's
No, I'm
congestion.
kind of don't get mad at the comparison. I'm kind of looking at this as like the Starbucks problem we have on Woodward at 13 Mile.
Thank God it's not that bad.
You've got cars backed up, and that can create a
Right.
problem. So I'm bouncing an idea around in my head about taking advantage of the fact that we have 52 foot right there. And instead of narrowing the whole driveway down to 25 foot, we put a little triangle between the two. So we have an entry lane and an exit lane. And that way it would steer your clients, because sure they'll go one way in Woodward anyways. There's no left turns to be made. So that would allow you, I think, to keep the driveway the width it is and only put in a divider that could be directed people to turn south or in. So, but that's my idea. I've got a bunch of other people here. That's all I've got for you. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there other questions for the petitioner, Mr. Gantina?
So based on the previous approval, is this the only contingency from the previous approval that's preventing you from opening the facility currently?
Yeah.
You've been able to comply with all other contingencies?
Our final fire is this week, and our final building is this week as well. So, and I've done this once before here in Royal Oak, and I opened one in Ferndale. We moved from Ferndale, and you guys have seen me here before, but our licensing is also contingent on our occupancy. So there's a lot of financial things that go along with that right now. I don't know if you guys are up on that, but the state of Michigan has a lot of like pre-licensure grants, licensure grants. They're contingent on having a license. So it's really cost us a lot. The delays that the world at large has writ upon us has cost us a lot already financially in terms of these grants. So, it feels stressful, like every day that goes by that we don't have our license, not only are we not able to take the children in, but we're losing some of that state funding that's there right now for this purpose. So.
Other questions for the petitioner? Commissioner Douglas.
Actually, this is for Mr. Twing. So the text of the original site plan, or land use and site plan, talk about the desirability of a 30-foot driveway protecting the cars that are parked on either side. And I'm not an expert at reading like physical plans, but does the picture that we have from that, whenever it was, 2021 action, show the driveway? I mean, what about the early plan makes them narrow the driveway?
Well, there's, I guess, answer it in twofold. One, there is a specific ordinance requirement that says that driveway entrance cannot be wider than 30 feet at the property line. Part of the secondary issue is the way it's currently configured is you can come off of Woodward Avenue and turn into a bank of parked vehicles.
Right.
It's not controlling the movement to turn into the actual travel lane, which is in between two banks of parked cars. And then on the south end, there's also an opening there. Not so much that people would turn in there, it's just extra wide there. So they're trying to use it as a decel lane, but it's not designed as a decel lane. It's a very wide driveway with no controlled entrance.
So, but my question is, what did we approve a year ago, or when?
You approved one with a 25-foot wide driveway, so if I can put the cursor up here, the current driveway curb is this line.
Oh, can't see that.
The other side, the south side, is this line. This is a bank of parked vehicles, a bank of parked vehicles. This is the minimum 20-degree or 20-foot wide travel lane. So your new curb line would be about in here and about there. So this curb line would have to move south, and this one would have to move north to line up with that.
Right, but this is your new drawing, or is
No,
this?
that's existing.
No, they
existing.
left the drawing
Existing.
the same. It was a
Okay.
condition of your approval that they change it.
Okay, I'm not seeing that in the
Yeah,
documents.
there is no drawing in the
No new
document.
drawing.
Does it? They don't want to do it.
Right.
So they don't want to draw it.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the
Oh, wait, I
petitioner?
do have another question.
Commissioner Douglas.
So, why is this your cost and not your landlord's?
Says the
We're
landlord.
working on that, Commissioner Douglas. The cost is quite exorbitant, quite frankly. We would like to explore alternatives if possible. The ordinance, and I don't know why it was put at 25 feet, because for commercial buildings, the opening is 30 feet according to the ordinance, the way I read it. Is that correct, Tim? Am I right on that? It should be 30 feet? 25 for residential and 30 for commercial?
The ordinance is no more than 30.
No more than
The
30.
planning commission said they wanted it limited to 25.
Okay.
I wonder
And
if it's because of the cars.
Yeah. Now, the alternative here could be, and we've had our designer and architect do up a sketch, Stephanie has it, is the ordinance provides for the opening to be on the lot owner's side,
Yeah, the property line.
on the property line. Now, we could, as an alternative, and I would hope that we could consider this, is on our side of the sidewalk, put in a barrier, very much similar to what's at my building, to narrow the opening into the parking lot. And I would have to say, at 30 feet, the 25-foot just does not work. And I can tell you that from experience on my lot, I can't get the garbage service in there. They will not come into my lot because they cannot navigate into there. I'm the only building on Woodward in that area. I have to pull my garbage out to Woodward Avenue to have it taken up because they refuse to come in because of that. So the proposal would be on our side of the sidewalk, we'll put in a barrier, whether it's a gate, landscaping or something to narrow the approach to protect the cars
Yeah, it would
in that
screen the
parking lot.
cars, which is,
And
yeah.
it's sort of a win-win at that point, because it protects the cars, it narrows it down, and it leaves the apron open for people to make that gradual turn into the lot. And that's important. And I'm gonna tell you, in the winter, it really is. My lot, where we've got the two entrances that are narrow in the winter, is just such a hazard. I don't even pull in there if I don't have to. I'll use my other lot to get in.
The state, I think, is responsible, or the county, somebody besides Royal Oak paves or snow plows Woodward Avenue, right?
Yeah, well, it's a trunk line, so,
I know it's not the city, but when it happens, I've had to go and stand in Woodward Avenue myself, like in between the cars, and shovel the snow out of the way, because it's impenetrable. So I can only imagine, because we plow our lot and then they plow, it doesn't interact well, and it effectively narrows it already.
even more.
Yeah, so it would be, I didn't even think about that until we were talking about it today, that it would make a narrower and even worse. Yeah.
So I hear you, but I still haven't heard an answer to my question. Why isn't this a landlord's expense and not the operator's expense?
Well, part of the problem there is, first of all, the property that we're narrowing that on it's not even a right-of-way anymore. There's this narrow area where the approach
So
is.
it's still not answering.
So,
Okay,
I mean, I think
but-
my answer is like we've split stuff.
Yeah, and
You know,
we've been
like-
trying to
And
do
it's
that.
sort of informal, but it's, you know,
I
he does some
wouldn't-
stuff, I do some stuff.
Yeah.
But at the baseline is like how we kind of hashed it out, if you will, is if it was a change that needed to be made only because it was a childcare usage, then I took on a lot of that, because why would somebody redo their building for some odd, obscure use?
Yeah.
And if it's something, though, that just improves the building overall and it will be there forever, you know, then he took on a lot of it. And so that's
Yeah,
the
that-
short answer, but
And I guess that's the best way to put it, Ms. Douglas, is this was a change that was necessitated by her use. But we've tried to work together to make this work, because I need it to work, she needs it to work. Quite frankly, Royal Oak needs it to work.
But of course, any tenant you would have in here, I mean, if you put a doctor's office in here, you would still be subject to the existing ordinances.
I think it was triggered by the change of use. Because
Yeah.
if it had been a retail, the last use was retail, I think.
Yeah.
So a new tenant would have just been able to move in with no changes, in my understanding. All this was triggered by a change of use. So we're about 100,000 in now, and the cheapest estimate we have for this so far is like $25,000, $30,000. So to us, it's like, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not Beaumont Hospital. They might have a heart attack too, but.
And just to add in,
So actually,
and I guess,
I'm
Okay,
good.
there we
Thank
go.
you.
Ms. Beaky, don't go away. Ms. Beaky.
Yeah, I have a question. So within about 4 years, Woodward is going to be hopefully repaved and retreated by the state. And one of the things that I've been advocating for is a potential redesign so that the street becomes more safe and people drive somewhere in the vicinity of the 45, or maybe even go lower as the 35. And my question is, it sounds like you've been in the building long enough that you remember when the road was narrower, and if you could talk a little bit about if an option were to be on the table to narrow this road again, would you be supportive of that, and do you think it would be helping?
I would be. Would you be supportive of narrowing Woodward, like not having 10 lanes there?
Getting closer to what it had
Yes.
been before 696 went in, is what I'm saying.
I'm sorry, Ms. Bush, I couldn't hear that one.
You said you observed the road before 696 was in. I'm asking if it were an option to again narrow it and try to put in some measures so that people drive more safely, would you be supportive of that?
Yes, I think I would be.
I would really love it, because right now we're geographically cut off from the downtown to take walking field trips and things. Only our oldest children can go on those. And it would be fantastic to be able to go to the market, you know, and all the things that are in downtown Royal Oak. We've taken a few of those trips over the years, but it's mostly our elementary age kids or like our kindergartners. You know, our youngest ones can't go, so.
That one crossing up that's a little bit further north is improved, but it's still quite dangerous to get across.
Right, yeah, and we've taken a group that way, and then one time we went down to Lincoln and crossed, but I mean, I can remember those times.
Yeah, I've walked it a lot, so I recognize that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, other questions with Mr. Cantina?
I do have one more quick question. So on the previous plans that were approved, I noticed here that there was a note for the demolition of the existing awning and canopy and a new screen wall that's going on top of the existing masonry wall. I went by the site today and I did not see either of those. The existing canopy was still up and that the new screen wall did not seem like it was installed. The reason I asked the question earlier about if the driveway issue was the only thing preventing you from opening, it seemed like the building was maybe not ready to open based on some of these things, and that the driveway issue is just one of the items. So if you could maybe just clarify that a little bit and why, I guess, what's
Right,
been
so the
approved previously in some other cases is still not complete.
Right, the canopy is what's the word, not destined, kind of destined. Planned to come down in the next week or so. So a lot of the old signage has already been taken off of the building, so that's the last remaining bit of it.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the petitioner?
You do have a public hearing.
I also have a question for the petitioner.
All right.
Thank you. So question is, how long has the existing driveway been in place?
The existing driveway has been in place since Woodward was widened for the 696 expansion. So that would be, I hate to show my age, folks, but going on 40 years now.
Okay, and your family owned the property at the time?
Yes, we have owned that section, those buildings on Woodward. My dad has been there since the mid to late 50s. And we've had those three buildings. Let's see, the 519 building that Stephanie is going into, we've had that since the mid 60s.
So who constructed the driveway, if you know? Was that MDOT or?
Oh, that was, well, whoever was in charge of putting in the 696 expansion. It's a Michigan trunk line, so I'm assuming it's MDOT, but I can't speak from personal knowledge of that. But all the entryways, except for where they took out the entryway to the synagogue that's just north, has remained unchanged since all of that was put in, including the 3 municipal parking lots that are on the block.
Okay, and so I would like to clarify this. Your family as owner did not install this driveway as it is today?
No, that was all put in by MDOT, and we had, as far as I know, we had no say or control over that when it was done.
All right. Are there other questions for the petitioner? Okay, now, Mr. Twing, don't go away. Mr. Twing mentioned that there's a public hearing, but before we go to public hearing, I hate to be a pill here, but I'm a little confused. The special land use when we granted before didn't have the conditions on it, the site plan did. So I'm just curious, maybe Mr. Leal will answer the question, why is the procedure that we need another, they already have a special land use, the site plan has the contingencies on it, why do we need another special land use?
Well, the special land use is where you're granting permission to seek a variance. You did not grant permission under the last special land use to seek a variance. So if you wanted them to have that ability, you need to modify that special land use approval and give them that permission.
Okay, that's an item that appears in the special land use, not in the site plan.
That's where you always grant that permission to seek variances.
Okay.
And then it's included in the site plan memo as an action that needs to happen before the site plan is approved, but.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was confused too, because I was like, is the narrow driveway is it related to us being a childcare? But it's not. That's how many parking spaces we need. That's the part that's related to being a childcare. So, and then it's related to zoning, and that's the other reason I was confused is because the zoning said it needed to be narrowed at the property line. And probably the first time around, I didn't know where the property line was, but now I know it's flush against the front of the building. It's the dashed line in that drawing. So the property line's way back. So, if we did have to narrow it, that's our property. We're in control of it. We don't have to go through MDOT and all that complication. So,
all right, thank you. So, given that, Don't go away.
I'm camping.
We
we're not
are
going
going to
anywhere.
call for the public hearing portion. If there's anybody from the public who would like to speak on this issue, they can come forward now, although you already came forward. Seeing no hands,
I will say you did get one letter that I passed out. Hopefully if everyone's had a chance to look at it. But you do have one letter from an adjacent property owner.
okay, thank you. For the record, we all have that.
That was from the original, was that from the original, this is new?
Dated yesterday, so
You can have it.
all right. We're closing the public portion of the hearing, and we're bringing it back to this side of the table for further discussion, comment, questions for the petitioner, questions for Mr. Twing. We are addressing the site plan, which, thank you, special land use in which we would, it's a revised with the contingency in it. That's what the petitioner is requesting. Comments, questions, Ms. Beakey?
Again, given the fact that Woodward is going to be under renovation in 4 years, which seems like a long time, but it's not really that long time away, and also because of the safety issues regarding at least having the driveway skirt the part that's off of Woodward, and if the applicants are saying that in their parking lot there hasn't been any problems, I would lean towards allowing the special variance. We need daycares desperately. I would like to be welcoming to a business that moved from Ferndale to Royal Oak. And again, as a person who walks along there, has walked across, I can see where narrowing that drive would be very tough with the cars, and I've also driven that way. And so just because of those safety issues, and again, I would say that when we get to the point, and we're working on that over these years with Woodward, that we take these kind of issues into consideration as we try to work with MDOT to slow the street and make it more acceptable to everyone who's using it. So that's kind of where I am, and I liked the suggestion by Mr. Ellison that if we do have to do something, maybe it would be just on that part of the driveway that's directly on the property line without having to tear everything out. But I would be open to having it stay like it is.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I'd like to echo some of that. I mean, this design has been in this place for years, decades. Likely performed by MDOT with the redesign of Woodward. In that time, we really, I don't know if we have any police reports, but I take the petitioners at their word that we haven't had any major accidents or any issues. The owner observations, even during the peak hours, they haven't seen any things that would compromise safety. In fact, the opposite. They've seen, maybe this helps in some cases. Woodward is one way here. I think that makes a difference as well. And the patronage is consistent and regular, meaning these aren't 1,000 different types of people coming in every day. It's the same 20, 30, 50 people that, will be there for a few years. And so you have, I'll say, an educated clientele that understand how to pull in and out every day and work with the dynamics. And from all intents and purposes, it seems like it's working appropriately. The hardship is clear to me. To put this in, especially in light of the fact that it is MDOT's plan to redesign Woodward. In fact, I'm working with a group of local mayors to position our values into that design as we move forward, which would definitely affect all of the aprons and entrances. So I don't think from a financial point of view, if it's been fine for the last 40 years or longer, and what's 4 more years, if there haven't been any observed issues, and I don't know how Royal Oak benefits from this in this particular case. I understand the ordinance, I understand the purpose of the ordinance, but in this particular case, I can't see the direct benefit given the dynamics of the situation and given the hardship of the owner and given the fact that this is going to change anyways in a few years. Sometimes there's unintended consequences, by making modifications. So that's kind of where my head's at on this one right now.
Mr. Klooster?
Yes, so the proposal that is in front of us is to leave the apron as it is with no modifications, either a wall that has been discussed by the petitioner or a triangle that limits traffic to one way in and one way out, as suggested by one of the commission members. I personally, as someone who does this quite a bit for planning purposes, the drive pulling into the side of vehicles, especially with the short distance from Woodward to those vehicles, is a dangerous situation. I don't find this plan to be safe. I respect the expertise of the planning department and the city engineer, who both recommend denying this. I cannot support this plan with this apron staying as it is.
All right, thank you. Other comments, questions? Commissioner Douglas?
There was a time, I don't know, about 6 months ago that I had to go to a business on Woodward, southbound on Woodward, entrances on the right, not here, but elsewhere, with a, 25-foot wide driveway, and I missed it and had to take the scenic route through Huntington Woods, go all the way back around, trying to hit that one driveway. So I am sympathetic to the challenges here. But Mr. Poe has proposed an alternative that might kind of be a compromise here, and that is to put I'm pointing at my screen, can you see? Put barrier walls on your property where the car parks are, but leave the apron available. And I would be inclined to support that compromise.
Other comments? Mr. Cantina?
So when I pulled into that lot today, I was coming off of Woodward at normal speeds on Woodward and making that turn in there. It seemed like I was actually going in there at a fairly high rate of speed. I've got safety concerns as well, from the standpoint of understanding that it's sort of the same time every day and the same folks that are going in and out. There are still going to be parents and children in that parking lot. And with this wider drive apron and the ability to sort of pull into that parking lot really anywhere within that 52-foot width, I do have some safety concerns with the fact that there is going to be children there. Cars will have the opportunity to sort of make that turn at a higher rate of speed than we really would like them to. I'm actually in support of the compromise solution in terms of putting in I would prefer a green screen versus a hard wall within the property line to sort of narrow that down and slow the vehicles down slightly before actually entering the parking lot, mainly from that safety perspective. You know, anyone that has kids knows that they don't necessarily always hold their parents' hand in the parking lot and can sometimes run off. I would just hate for that situation where a car does come in maybe a little bit faster than it could or should if some other sort of slowing device was there and something tragic to happen. So I'd be in support of a compromise solution, leaving the apron the way it is, but putting some sort of green screen down on either side, or a green screen on either side that narrows that to whatever width we seem appropriate.
So I don't know if it's appropriate, but I have a sketch that the architect drew of that. I don't know how I can obviously hand it to you, but I don't know if that's what usually happens at these meetings.
If you have something that you'd like to present, I think you can present it and we can look at it. Why don't you do a favor and start down there and let people...
Let us pass it up.
All right.
I have to say, there's been a little tricky with this process.
Kind of what Woody was describing.
Did Matt
All right.
have two screenings in there?
Yeah, one on either side. It's a little wooden wall, bushes in front.
Okay, because he had some notes on
Okay.
that.
In the meantime, Mr. Klooster would like to pop up again here.
Yeah, so maybe just to clarify, I would also be in support of an alternative solution to what we have in front of us. What's problematic is that we haven't seen that, and the sketch that we're seeing hasn't gone through staff review. Staff hasn't had an opportunity to review it, weigh in, and provide their input in the report that we get on every one of these proposals.
This is a little bit of a sidebar, but when we first recognized that this was going to be a problem, probably about a month ago, I didn't know what to do. you know, and I remember Commissioner Douglas, every time I'm here, I see your face. I know you're on all these commissions, but I'm not so big with titles and things like that. It was like, can I talk to somebody? Can I email somebody? Can I go ask? Like, here's the things I'm thinking about. Like, there's ideas.
You're the only shy person in Royal Oak.
Yeah, it doesn't sense.
Because, you know, like, you want to do the right thing, and you want to make an argument that's persuasive, and and it's very expensive to come here, so you don't want to come and, you know, you do it wrong, and so you have to do it again, and it takes a lot of time. So you don't want to mess up, but, you know, it's tricky to navigate the process. So I hear what you're saying. Like, I don't want to just give, oh, here's another idea and give it to you tonight. Like, I want to do the appropriate thing, but at the same time, if I have a sketch that would show you sort of some of these scenarios, it seems wise to show you, even if we have to do it more officially or something. At least we know we're on the right track, you know? I don't know.
Mr. Ellison.
Yeah, as far as, oops. Come on, hey, got it the first time. As far as adding the wall behind the sidewalk, the only thing that concerns me about that is right now, if you pull in a parking lot, there could or there could not be a car parked in that first spot. And if I'm looking correctly, one of the first spots is a handicap spot. But on the exit side, the picture I'm looking in front of me has got a car right up next to it. So you're always open to the possibility that there may not be a car there, depending on the time of day and how busy the business is. You put a wall in there, there's always going to be a wall there. You're always going to have the obstruction. If someone... What would I do without my mother? You're always going to have the obstruction of the wall, so someone's going to pull in and there's a chance. I mean, I saw the drawing was good because they rolled the wall back a little bit and it gives them, but still, I'm concerned about coming in there and hitting a concrete wall, and so you've got more access, especially with kids in there. I think, in my mind, it's best to leave that lot fluctuating so that it's not going to be a permanent obstruction inside that driveway. And I still kind of like my idea of directing traffic in and out of that. It would even be better if you would restrict that first spot on the exit side so that there's more room to maneuver. But there's a bunch of us up here with a bunch of different ideas, so.
Ms. Beakey.
Actually, related to that, I wanted to ask, again, we have requirements for parking that are related to formulas, but on a daily basis, is your parking ever full or is it mostly fluid? And so the maneuvering is really not the people parking long term, it's more in and out. And so could you lose, as he had just suggested, a spot to just keep the sight line, keep the space? Now that doesn't slow the traffic though in terms of what Woody was bringing up, or Mr. Gantino was bringing up. But again, given sight and that sort of thing, I'm just curious if you use all the parking spaces, I guess. Related to this issue.
Well, right now, nobody's inhabiting that building and staff tend to park in that lot. But we also, because I park in the one close spot and my associate parks in the other close spot, so those spots are always filled, and it's kind of funny because I haven't been worried about cars running into them. Like, that's where I park. But we also have access to the city lot that's on the north of the building. It's massive. It holds like 60 cars. Like, how many cars is the other
I don't
lot?
know, it's 30.
It's a huge lot. So.
It's a big lot, and it's not utilized much at all. If there are more than a couple cars in there during the day, it's rare.
But the associated lot, even if we lost 2 spots, would still meet the formula for childcare that's required by the code.
So there's potential to fill in that space, maybe even with more green space or something to create a different kind of buffer.
That's true, like a little garden kind of area.
And that would slow traffic if it were something like that. Actually, trees would slow traffic even more.
Well, I was thinking, now we're really off the, but I was thinking it was more like a bushy, gardeny tree, with the right height. That would also slow traffic, but wouldn't it be so dangerous if a car ran into it? It's not as bad as I think the plan would, in this thing that's going around, is have 2 posts with wooden slats across it. So it's not a big cement thing that would cause more damage to the cars than,
All right, other comments, questions? Okay, my turn. So, I have been out there and trying to, and doing the maneuvering that has to be done. I am not a traffic engineer, I'm not an architect, But I will tell you, it was a little bit scary because not for me, I knew where I was going. I'd looked it up on the map, and the cars behind me, I wasn't so sure that they were aware that there's a speed limit. And so I see that that is an issue, and I heard somebody say, well, this can be used as a deceleration lane. It's not supposed to be, but it is. I don't know if that's what people do. To the extent that it does serve as a deacceleration lane, I think that's a benefit. And so my view of this, and I don't know if somebody already said this, that you got to ask what's the public benefit here, because it's a safety issue we're talking about here. And if narrowing this enhances safety, we've had the argument that it does, then we would want to enforce the rule. But I've been out there, I'm not so sure it does. The other aspect of this is that when the cars are parked there, you only have the 20-foot maneuvering lane anyways, and you're coming out and you're coming in the center of that 52-foot. You're not going to the south side. When somebody exits, you can't, if there's cars parked there, you can't go more than, you're not using the rest of the apron. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You only can use the middle of the apron anyways,
Yeah.
which is one reason I'm not sure I like the divider issue, because in reality, during the day, there's a 20-foot lane. So I would not be in favor of the divider. I also point out that this isn't something created by you. I don't see the public benefit. I do see it's a big expense. I also see at the end of the tunnel it may get torn up anyways. I wouldn't mind to see an expansion of the green space on either side. I don't think you're going to lose any parking if you do that.
Nope.
So my inclination would be to grant the special, revised special land use and permit this petitioner to go ask for the variance from the zoning board, but that only has to be for the 20 or the 30-foot width, because what you're talking about here with the additional green space there, that's not going before the zoning board.
I don't have that as a submitted plan.
Right.
The plan I have in front of me has no green space.
Right.
in it.
So my inclination would be to simply support granting the request. Any other comments? Ms. Beakey?
I would just comment, I'd be supportive of that, and also I would encourage the applicants on their own then potentially to put some planters or something and create that kind of green space.
All right. Other comments, questions, or how about a motion one way or the other?
So Mr. Twing, I mean, there have been times in the past when we have asked applicants to submit a new plan that to the satisfaction of staff. Is that an option here? I mean, if we describe what we want, can we give the staff administrative approval to bless what they might bring? And do they need that to go to the ZBA?
Well, if you're going to narrow it by adding green space, so the driveway is not 52 feet wide, if they add green space to narrow it to 30 feet, they don't need zoning board action.
Oh,
They've
We'll
narrowed
narrow
it.
it tomorrow.
They've narrowed it down to 30 feet.
they
So they
just
don't-
don't have a masonry wall there.
Yeah, right. It doesn't matter. So they've taken out the ability to drive across it.
But the apron remains.
Well, and that's always the issue on it. The engineers get into it where again, you're turning into green space potentially and running over bushes. Versus normally what you would see occurs if you narrowed it here at somewhere to 30 feet, this apron would change
Right.
in order to match up so that you're not allowed to turn into this space here.
Right.
That's the other issue of where people can, if you leave the apron, why the engineers don't like that left. You put a big wall there, you can turn into the wall. But from a zoning standpoint, that your distance has been narrowed.
Mr. Mayor.
So if you don't want to grant them permission to go, you want it narrowed, then you should deny the special land use request because you want it narrowed. That's your prior action. You want it narrowed.
And then revise
And
it.
then, well, the former site plan had them going down to 25 feet. If you want to let them go to 30, you can modify that, but you've already told them to narrow it. That was your prior
Oh, sorry.
action.
Okay, I think Mr. Mayor had his hand up first.
Yeah, so two questions just to confirm procedure, but also I think Mr. Casada makes a really good point too. Even if I'm kind of against the wall idea, just because I also agree, like clipping it and creating the situation like that is happening to the south. In general, I just have this whole thing against masonry walls and how they just constantly get knocked down. They're ugly and they have issues. I think though that if there's cars parked there, you know, I mean, we're trusting to some extent drivers aren't going to run into the cars. But if we were to narrow to 30 feet by allowing that pavement to be turned up and have some ornamental landscaping in there, I just think where the real cost comes in is with the apron, redoing the apron, which I think is all going to be redone. So I think it's perfectly acceptable to move forward, and I don't know how we technically achieve that in a motion, I'm happy to make, but because it's a little bit complicated, but we go with the 30 feet, but that grass fill narrows the driveway to 30 feet, but the apron is not touched. But given the history and mechanics of it, I don't know how to make that motion exactly, Mr. Twing.
Well, I'm going to go back to, if it's your intent that they comply with the ordinance, then I think you don't need to deal with the special land use and modify it. You've already granted the special land use. You're not letting them seek a variance. So you can move on from the special land use, go to the site plan and modify it to allow a 30-foot wide driveway with landscaping on the private property and the apron to remain. You can
Got it.
have that referred to staff and we'll make sure that's what's done.
Okay.
Mr. Klooster.
Yeah, so I'm generally a little concerned that I feel like this commission is trying to design this entry for the petitioners. Ultimately, what's in front of us is a 52-foot wide apron turning directly into parked spaces. Our city engineer and our planning department both have significant safety concerns with that. The suggestion that this is maybe a deceleration lane, I have significant concerns with the safety of that when most of that is 5-foot sidewalk where pedestrians could be. Decelerating is usually you're going way too fast to slow down and see what's there. If there's a pedestrian there, there's significant danger for those pedestrians, especially young pedestrians who would be going to a daycare. Ultimately, we haven't seen a solution that is safe in the eyes of the city engineer or the planning department. I don't think we can move forward with something on maybes or could be's or maybe I think it should be this. It is the responsibility of the petitioner to come forward with a plan that we can review and respond to. What we have in front of us is not safe, based on all of the feedback we have from the experts that our city employs.
Ms. Beakey.
I absolutely agree that this is a situation which is unsafe, but the unsafe factors here are not because of the conditions of the business, but rather the conditions of the speed on Woodward and the fact that it's large and people drive on it like it's a highway. We cannot ask our petitioners with businesses to try to correct something that's not correctable because of the speeds of the cars on Woodward. As a city, we have to take that on with the state and with the people who are in our community driving. And because this has been in place for so many years, I agree 100% it's unsafe. It's what the Strong Town refers to as a strode. We have businesses on basically a highway, and it's a problem because it is unsafe. But the lack of safety comes from the speed of the cars, and making the driveway narrower and making the entrance narrower, I don't think is going to help the situation. And again, with snowplows and such, and so again, with all deference to the planning and engineering, it's the road, but it is the road. And if we don't take into consideration the entire place around it, that narrowing doesn't help slow unless we have a slow lane there, which is again a condition that we'd have to change on Woodward. So again, I'm okay with, in a very unideal situation, allowing that driveway to stay wide, because it is an unofficial deceleration lane, but again, that's because of the Woodward speed, not because of the business itself.
Other comments? Mr. Twing, you had been beckoned to perhaps explain how a motion could be made. I think you gave some explanation of that. I'm not 100% sure I understand. So the request is to revise the special land use and give them permission to go to the zoning board. But if we think we're going to get to the site plan and we're going to approve the site plan because we're going to stick with the 30 foot at the property line, your procedural suggestion is to say, okay, we deny the special land use and just go on to the site plan.
Yeah, you have different options depending on which one of them you choose to take. The staff report and the information that was provided in the packet was based on the plan that was submitted, which was to leave the current configuration as is, with no changes. So the need there is to seek or to get a variance from the ZBA to exceed the 30-foot requirement. If you're not willing, or you're not willing to grant that permission to do that, then you don't need to give it. And the petitioner is kind of modifying their request on the fly in front of you, as Mr. Klusser said. But I'm going to go back to say that if the intent is to comply with the ordinance, you've already told them to comply with the ordinance, other than that you've narrowed it to 25 feet. So you could move on from the special land use, get to the site plan, and if you wanted to widen it to 30, we'd let them widen it to 30 and they'd submit a plan based on that. The other comment was leaving the apron. So depending on where you wanted to go with this, there are different actions. The first one is, do you want to let them seek a variance where they can get a driveway width more than 30 feet? If the answer to that is no, then you should just reject the special land use request modification.
Yeah.
If you want to let them have it more than 30 feet in width, then you're going to have to grant them permission to go to the ZBA to get a wider driveway.
And just to
that's your first action.
Yeah, and just to clarify though, if the driveway is 30 feet at the property line, that's in compliance with our ordinance.
Correct, it's at the property line. Generally what will occur from the engineering standpoint out in the right of way is they'll make them do the apron to line up with that. Now this is MDOT's right of way, so it's MDOT's decision.
Oh, I thought this wasn't in them then.
This is MDOT's right of way, it's not the city's.
Okay. Petitioner has a question, go ahead.
Okay, so if I understand what you're saying, you can say, we want it still to be narrow, but it's okay if you narrow it on your side. I'm excited about that prospect because we wouldn't have to go to the zoning board. So if that were to occur, I understand nobody wants to approve anything that's just ideas that we're sitting here talking about. So if we worked with our architect to get that sketch together of what we want to do to narrow it on our side, and we could get it to you, my question is, do we have to, pay another $1,500 fee? Do we have to wait until January? Do we have to do all these things? Or is there another process that the Planning Commission could use to have some idea of what we're doing on our side of the lot that would narrow it, so that everybody felt positive that it was being done? You were approving something that was legitimate, and we were held to what we said we were going to do in a more formal way. Is there a procedure for that?
To the answer, I guess it depends on what your reaction is to the action that's taken here tonight. You have an approved site plan and special land use.
Right.
If you chose to comply with that, we'd be done, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
So if the Planning Commission takes an action tonight and you proceed with that, then we're done. If you don't want to do that at some point in the future, then yes, you may be back here.
Well,
So that's,
I guess that's where I feel like it's a little bit of the rub, because if I had understood whatever the process was, where we could have had this discussion somewhere before the Planning Commission, I would have loved to have done that, so that I would have had the proper things for you at the proper time, because I don't want to waste time or money or your time either. I would have loved to us all to have seen.
well, can I ask a blank question?
Yeah.
What do you want to do here, and which are you submitting? Do you want to leave it the way it is, or do you want to modify it and narrow it? What's your request?
if I could narrow it on my side with green space, like get rid of the hardscape and plant things that would stop cars flying through, and do it on my own time and my own dime and not have to involve MDOT or the zoning commission, that's what I would prefer to do. Because I could go tomorrow and do that, you know.
Okay, so you do want to narrow it.
Yes, if this commission
if,
has
and if,
the
and if.
authority to allow us to do that, we would.
Yeah, I think I understand. I mean, if you were going to narrow it with green space on your side of the sidewalk to 25 feet, then we wouldn't even be here.
Right.
So really what we're talking about is the potential to add 5 feet, but that is a solution that you would not have to come here if you would do it. That's what I understand.
Well, I think the bigger solution, I mean, the bigger comment on their side is they don't want to tear up the apron and replace it. That's what they don't want to do.
Right, and to be honest, I didn't understand all the implications of tearing up the apron a year ago. I didn't know it was an MDOT thing. I didn't know Woodward was 40 feet deep. I didn't know there's rebar there and sewers. Why would I know that? So, you know, if I had known, hindsight's 20/20, right? Like, I would have been able to make a more informed decision way back when I was trying to guide the architect, because I could have told him then, like, hey, we want this green space on our side.
All right. Mr. Mayor.
So what I hear is, I don't really see any support keeping the status quo as presented, meaning that keeping it, not doing anything at all is an option. So therefore, technically, we would make a motion to deny the request to the special land use. Given some consensus I see, if we were then to go to the site plan, which we can do here, we say, okay, we will direct on the site plan. Do we have the opportunity to do that tonight, to make a change to the site plan? Is that part of the, even if you deny the first, we can still modify the site plan? Okay. So we say, okay, we will do a modification to the site plan that permits greenscaping to achieve the 30-foot drive on the property owner's side without being required to make any modifications to the apron. We could do that subject to the greenscaping approval of the planning department. Then that takes care of everything. They could go mock up their drawings tomorrow, submit something to you in a reasonable time. They could take a look and say, yep, that's pretty good. We can go for that. In parallel, they could start digging out the concrete if they wanted, because it's their property right there. Is that something that we could do tonight if I were to make that motion?
A question to me, the answer is yes,
Okay.
if that's what you want to do.
Yep.
Okay.
Comment from Mr. Ellison. You're next.
Oh, yeah, the mayor kind of took my thunder, but that's okay.
Sorry.
Before.
I took yours
The
before.
only thing, one of the things I wanted to clarify is we keep saying, got to narrow it. We haven't defined it. It is either the approach, 52-foot wide approach on Woodward, or it is either the entry to the parking lot. I want to make sure we're all talking about the same it. And what I'm hearing is the entry to the parking lot in a previous action was already approved at 25 foot. What they want to do now is accomplish that 25 foot, but adding 5 foot to it to make it work better. And what I'm hearing is consensus is that may be a better idea. And since that's the only change we need to make on the site plan, and then we can, and staff knows what we need to do. So I think that could be all done internally. So we deny the request to change it, and make it now 30 foot, and then using that, the sketch that you brought as a guide, and if you can get that done and make the planning director and his department happy, I think our work here is done.
Mr. Gantino.
That's good.
So yeah, I think the clarifications that were made just most recently really helped quite a bit. So, for us to deny the special land use, it kind of reverts back to what was originally approved, which is the 25-foot. We can address that in the site plan by increasing that to the 30-foot width. But I kind of agree with Mr. Klooster in the sense that I think we can do all those actions without specifically stating how they narrow it to the 25 or 30 feet. And I'm not so sure that we should state how they narrow it. If I understood Mr. Twing correctly, if the action that we take is to simply deny the special land use, the apron stays the way it is, they don't have to go to zoning board. The second action is related to the site plan, simply changing the width of the drive lane at the property line, and I guess full stop at that point. to Mr. Klooster's point, let them come back with how they propose to be in compliance with that new direction, to staff satisfaction.
And that's what I understand we're doing. We're simply changing to 25 to 30, and they're going to come up and tell us how they're going to do that.
Sure, I guess I was more
Yep.
speaking to the mayor's comment of the motion stating a green screen or something along those lines.
Commissioner Douglas,
I move denial of the special land use.
is there a second? Second by Mr. Ellison.
Just for clarification, it's a denial of the modification of, because.
Sorry, yes.
We never
Yes,
heard
you
it
don't,
yet.
that would be a big
Not
problem.
special land
Yes.
use. We already
Yeah,
approved
let's
that.
not go
Of
off.
course, the clarification. yeah.
Okay, with that clarification, is there any further discussion of the motion? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to take a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion, what's that?
Who supported it?
Mr. Ellison. All right, the motion passes, so you are denied permission to go to the zoning board, and now we're going to go to the site plan. And do we need further discussion here, or simply a motion that I understand correctly would be to widen the opening of the parking lot to 30 feet and do we need to add leaving the apron as it is? I don't know if we need to do that.
Well, I would simply indicate your preference on whether the apron's there or not,
Okay.
because generally speaking, engineers, MDOT, city would then make them change it to meet that 30-foot opening.
Okay, with that clarification, is there a motion?
Oh, that motion.
Okay, yes.
Okay, I guess the motion I'll offer is to change the existing, the pre-approved, or the previously approved site plan from the dimension of 25 foot up to 30 foot, which still matches the ordinance.
Okay, and is there any element of leaving the driveway approach as is?
I'm fine with, yes, the motion leaves the driveway approach as is. And we'll
Okay.
deal with it. If any
That's part of the
pushback
motion.
comes back. Yeah, it's part of the motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Oh, second.
Second by Commissioner Douglas. Do we need further discussion on the issue, Mr. Klooster?
So I'm not going to support this motion simply for the fact that I don't think we should be telling city engineers what appropriate aprons and radii and those types of things are. The city engineers, MDOT, all have their standards, and I have concerns over us trying to override them.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, and I appreciate that sentiment. And in fact, last night we just had a discussion on 4th and Campbell about standard engineering design and how it's not working and it's not great, and we're taking a creative approach to that because the situation warrants it. I think in this particular case, given the facts of the case and the observations of the property, and the nuances, it does, affirm to me a more creative solution which has been presented. My only thing is I might have pushed for a little bit more green space. Maybe they're going to put bollards or walls up there or something that'll drive me nuts, but to the extent that they use green space and keep water runoff and beautify the property, hint, hint, that might be the best approach to go.
That's what we want to do. We have children there.
But I've been called worse things than a guy that likes green space. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's I don't want to say a compromise, but I think the merits of the situation. I mean, at the end of the day, Ms. Beakey's right. I mean, you got cars flying down Woodward, you got backups. I mean, you might even create more of a backup situation if you narrowed it there at 8 in the morning with rush hour and kids could get rear-ended in the car. There's just so much that could happen, but what we've noticed is that over 40, 50 years, there hasn't been any real issues like we see in other locations on Woodward. It always makes me weary dramatically changing it, especially in 4 years when we're redoing everything there. If that wasn't happening for another 40, I may be a little bit more on the other side of this equation. But given we're all things equal, the trade-offs and the fact that new work is coming to Woodward and sooner as opposed to later, I think this is the right motion.
All right, Commissioner Douglas.
Yeah, I just have an administrative question for Mr. Twing. How does this affect the timing of their certificate of occupancy? Because as they indicated, they're pretty close to final inspections.
Well, it's always possible if they get their drawings in and we can approve them, but we would have them pay a site bond and we'd hold on to the site bond until the work was done.
So it's
And
not.
give them a temporary.
Yeah, so it's not.
It's not a safety issue, so,
basically done.
it's not a building safety issue.
Right. Yeah, so that they can open.
Yes.
soon. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Beakey?
Very, very briefly, I just wanted to say that I appreciate this discussion, and again, I think it will inform us on future discussions related to street safety and such, and just make a plug for native Michigan trees and shrubs, et cetera. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Beakey. That's a good point.
All right. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay. Well, I'm going to call for the vote. We'll do a voice vote. We've been in that habit. All those in favor of the motion to approve the site plan with the opening to the parking lot at 30 feet and the apron staying as it is, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
All right, we have 6 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion passes. Congratulations, and good luck to you, and we'll look forward to your opening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Who do we submit our revised parking lot plan to?
Oh, that Mr. Paul knows that.
Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the work is basically done right now. We can get that in and get started. Thank you very much.
so
All right,
much.
thank you. Good luck. All right, what's our next order of business here? Other business. Is there other business, Mr. Twing?
I have none.
Okay, I'm going to bring up my issue here just because I think this is kind of interesting. So sometimes, I don't know about the other planning commissioners, but sometimes I'm going to go back and look at something we did before, either because I want to compare it, or because, quite frankly, it happens to me, clients ask me about things. But it's very tough to go back and find something because you have to go on the website, because you have to go back and there's no index that says which projects or addresses or petitioners. It's only meeting by meeting. How does the department go back and find previous decisions, and is there some way that the rest of us might be permitted to do so if you have an easier way?
Well, all of our records are based on address. So every address folder, every BSNA folder is based on a property address. So every case file that you would see is also in there based on that address. It's not based on it's not indexed based on the number here, but you can tell all of those things related to that property are in that folder, so you can see all the prior cases to it.
Okay, those are publicly accessible or not?
They are public. How accessible they are, is you can come in and view them. They're not all online somewhere.
Okay, that was really the question there. All right, Mr. Ellison has a comment.
Yeah, you can go onto the city website and pull up an address and find history. I mean, I do it for my own house, find history of my water bills and add any citations I may have been doing over the whole life of my property. So it's out there. So if the address is already searchable, could we attach the community development stuff to that search?
Well, and the planning records are. The newer planning records are also in BSNA that Jim's referring to. You can go on there and search a piece of property, an address, or a tax ID number, and go and see everything that's been placed in there.
So if I go on my BSA account and I search on the address, it will tell me when an item came before the planning commission? I have to check it.
As long as it's not more than probably 8 years old.
Okay.
Because planning has not been using the BSNA system as long as the building division.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'll
The
check
only
that out.
That was
caveat
under the
to
old
that being-
planning director.
Mr. Cantina?
If you are not the owner of record of that property, there
We
may
have to
be a
pay.
small fee in order for you to access those records. I've used BSNA quite often, and it does allow you to claim ownership of certain certain number of addresses, whether you are actually the owner or not. But there is a limitation if you are not the property owner of record in terms of how publicly accessible it is. It is accessible, but you might need to pay a couple dollars in order to access it.
Okay. But it's worth it because otherwise I have to go to each meeting and
But it does give you the full history of all the
Okay.
actions, code
I'm gonna check
enforcement
that out.
issues, whatever it may be.
Yep, I will check that out. Okay. Any other, thank you, Mr. Twing. Any other comments, questions, statements from the commissioners?
Happy holidays.
Okay, and I'd just like to say welcome again back to our former mayor and our former planning commissioner. It was nice to see you. It's
good to be back.
All right, we're ready to, Mr. Klooster.
Yeah, so this is my last planning commission meeting. So I did not renew my commitment to the planning commission. So I just want to say a thank you to all the commission members that I've worked with over the last 4 years. Appreciate all the things we've done together, and looking forward to that master plan coming up. So keep up the good work, and thank you.
And all those soccer games.
All right, well, it's a little bit of a surprise. Sorry to hear that, Mr. Klooster. I don't know how we're going to replace you, but okay. Very good. Ms. Beakey.
I was going to say thanks for all your input during this time, and I do hope you will engage heavily on the master plan. I will miss your level-headed insights if you don't. And I was going to, and one other comment I want to make is I hope maybe in the new year we can talk a little bit. We've had a lot of insight from the citizens on these various plans we've been working on, sustainability and strategy and the federal funds that have come through, et cetera. And maybe to talk about kind of some of the planning commissions, what are our kind of our North Star values that come through of all those things that help us. Maybe just a little discussion on that, perhaps.
All right.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you, Mr. Klooster. I mean, you've done a good job up here, both with your professional acumen and your thoughtful remarks and comments. I think has fostered an environment of not just learning for some of us, but also helping advance, the city the way we need it to go in terms of all matters. And so I heard rumors this might be the case, and I was keeping an eye to see if you were going to renew your desire to be on the commission, of which if you did, it would be my pleasure to appoint you. But I also understand public service is hard, and you have a beautiful family managing an awesome practice, and you can definitely hang your hat up high saying you served your community with excellence, and not a lot of people step up to the plate, so we're very grateful that you chose to do that for all of us here in the city. Thank you.
Well, all right.
You're here.
Second. All right. Any other comments? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, support by Mr. Klooster. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Are you still here?
I am.